approximately 30 days to complete. So we'll need to come back for sentencing no earlier than 30 days. When would the parties wish?
The moment Ksoo heard those guilty verdicts ring out in that Jacksonville courtroom, his entire world shattered. He stood up slowly at the defense table, his face painted with pure disbelief. The 26-year-old ATK rapper had just been found guilty of first-degree murder in the killing of Charles Lil Buck McCormick Jr., and the weight of that mandatory life sentence, without parole, was hitting him like a sledgehammer to the chest. But this wasn't just any murder conviction. This was the culmination of a 7-day trial in Duval County Court that began in late July 2025. The case centered around the January 15, 2020 execution-style killing of Lil Buck, a 23-year-old rapper with loose ties to the rival KTA gang. What made this murder even more cold-blooded was the timing. It happened exactly 1 year to the day after Ksoo's half-brother, Willie Boss Goon Addison, was gunned down, making it clear this wasn't random violence, but calculated revenge. The evidence against Ksoo was overwhelming, painting a picture of premeditated murder that would make even the hardest street soldiers cringe. Prosecutors presented dashcam footage showing the shooter chasing and firing at McCormick, with the victim trying desperately to escape before being gunned down in broad daylight. The state's case was built on more than just video evidence, though. They had rap lyrics from Ksoo's songs that were interpreted as confessions, including lines about smoking Dirk and BBY to the face, and Instagram post with Lil Buck's photo caption, "Bye-bye." But the most devastating blow came from within Ksoo's own bloodline. Abdul Robinson Sr., known on the streets as Blue, took the witness stand and identified his own son as the shooter in that dashcam video. This wasn't just any witness. This was the man who helped found ATK, the same gang his son rode for, now pointing the finger directly at his own flesh and blood. The courtroom was silent as Blue testified, stating, "I know my kids," when asked to identify the shooter. This moment represented more than just testimony. It was a father choosing his own freedom over his son's life. Blue had cut a deal with prosecutors, pleading guilty to accessory charges and agreeing to testify against both his sons in exchange for reducing his potential 60-year sentence to just 76 months. The betrayal cut even deeper when you understand Blue's motivations. He cited health issues, including diabetes, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, and failing kidneys, as reasons for cooperating. But it wasn't just about his health. Blue wanted to be there for his younger children, including an 8-year-old daughter and 6-year-old twins. He described the decision as the hardest I've had to make in my life, acknowledging it would make his life harder after release, and that life sentences for his sons might be worse than death. The family dynamics were already fractured, but Blue's testimony shattered whatever remained. Online reactions were mixed, with some viewing it as a father teaching accountability, while others labeled it outright betrayal. Comments flooded social media with reactions like, "Imagine the betrayal, and if my dad did this, I'd cry on the spot." The streets don't forgive snitching, especially when it comes from your own blood. But Ksoo wasn't the only family member caught up in this web of violence and betrayal. His brother Abdul Robinson Jr. was also charged with second-degree murder in the McCormick case and is set for a separate trial. Their cousin Leroy, ATK Scotty Whitaker, was tried alongside Ksoo as an accomplice and also found guilty of first-degree murder by a separate jury. The evidence against Whitaker was just as damaging. DNA evidence placed him at the scene, including his blood found on the victim's clothing after he cut himself, jumping a fence during their escape. A loaded AR-15 rifle found in the getaway car was linked to Whitaker, with the weapon set to fire and containing 26 rounds of ammunition, showing clear intent to kill. The prosecution
picture than the one presented by multiple witnesses.
So if I can give a description of how I describe my brother, I would say that I call him fat, slew-footed, which we would say 2 left feet. I call him stocky and tallest. He's a giant to me.
That physical description could be a key part of the defense's strategy in a direct challenge of the prosecution's case. With several eyewitnesses, including Jacksonville police officers, describing the shooter as shorter and slimmer and around 5'8", the Robinson counsel questions how their client can be the shooter when
Our witness was Dominique Barner, the getaway driver, who accepted a plea deal reducing his potential life sentence to 20 years. Barner testified that Ksoo orchestrated the hit, detailing how they found McCormick's address online, waited outside his apartment, and followed him to the plaza where the murder occurred. The defense tried to poke holes in the prosecution's case, arguing that the shooter in the video appeared shorter and slimmer than Ksoo's 61 to 230 pounds frame. They also challenged the credibility of witnesses like Barner, noting his history of lying to police and multiple plea deals. But the mountain of evidence was too overwhelming. Fingerprints, DNA, cell phone data, and most damaging of all, his father's testimony. Sentencing is scheduled for the week of September 8, 2025, where Ksoo will officially receive his mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. But this conviction is just the beginning. He still faces another trial for the 2019 murder of 16-year-old Adrian B.B.Y. Gaynor Jr., where he could potentially receive another life sentence. The courtroom reactions captured in viral clips showed the raw emotion of a young man watching his life slip away. But they also revealed something deeper about the fractured state of Jacksonville's most notorious gang family. The same streets that made Ksoo a local legend were now demanding their pound of flesh. And the very family members who helped build ATK were the ones tearing it down from within. The betrayal, the violence, the endless cycle of revenge. It all led to this moment where a father had to choose between his freedom and his son's life. And he chose himself. Blood in the streets. The ATK vs KTA war that consumed Jacksonville. The roots of Jacksonville's deadliest gang feud run deeper than most people realize, stretching back to 2017, when territorial disputes and personal beefs began escalating between ATK, AC's top killers, and KTA. Kill Them All, also known as 6 Block. What started as neighborhood beef transformed into a full-scale war that would claim over a dozen lives and turned the city's drill rap scene into a literal battleground where diss tracks became death sentences. The spark that ignited this deadly feud came in June 2018 with the ambush at a Waycross, Georgia restaurant where ATK leader Yunjin Ace was shot 8 times but survived while his brother Trayvon Bullard and 2 associates were killed. KTA was immediately blamed for the hit, and the streets knew this wasn't going to slide, but it was the killing of Willie Boss Goon Addison later that year in a drive-by shooting after a rap event that really set off the powder cake. Willie wasn't just another street soldier. He was Ksoo's half-brother and a respected figure in ATK, and his death would fuel a revenge campaign that's still claiming lives today. The first major retaliation came in February 2019 when 16-year-old Adrian B.B.Y. Gaynor Jr., a KTA-affiliated rapper, was shot over 60 times at Hilltop Village Apartments. Prosecutors would later charge Ksoo with this murder, alleging, as the deadly feud between ATK and KTA raged on, a pivotal moment in time would forever change the trajectory of Ksoo's life. The 2018 killing of Willie Boss Goon Addison was more than just another drive-by shooting. It was a turning point that set off a chain reaction of violence and revenge that would consume everything in its path. The incident took place after a rap event, leaving behind a trail of blood, pain, and anguish for the families involved. Willie's death sent shockwaves through ATK, with his brother Abdul Jr., a respected figure within the group, vowing to exact vengeance on those responsible. This promise would become a mantra for Ksoo as he navigated the treacherous waters of gang politics. But before the murders, before the trials, and before his father's betrayal on the witness stand, Ksoo was just another young brother from Jacksonville trying to make his mark in the drill rap scene.
The murder trial of Jacksonville rapper Hakeem Ksoo Robinson and his cousin Leroy Whitaker. It's one step closer to going to the jury. Closing arguments began this afternoon. Both men are charged in the 2020 shooting death of 23-year-old Charles Lil Buck McCormick Jr. Prosecutors say the motive involved a diss track McCormick created. News 4 Jax reporter Brianna Brownlee has been following this trial from the beginning. She's joining us now live outside the courthouse with the latest on this.
Yes, it was a day full of disruptions in the courtroom.
He emerged around 2019 with a verse in a YouTube video that caught attention in the local underground. His early singles, Can't Think and Ksoo, collectively amassed over 6 million views on YouTube, showing he had the talent to potentially make it out of the streets through music. However, as Ksoo's star began to rise, so did his involvement with ATK's operations. He collaborated with ATK leader Yunjin Ace on ATK War, a diss track targeting their KTA rivals. The music video showed young Ksoo surrounded by guns and gang members projecting an image of strength, loyalty, and camaraderie. But beneath the surface, tensions were brewing. The killing of Willie Addison remained unavenged, and the promise of revenge hung over ATK like a specter. It was in this environment that Ksoo's lyrics began to take on a darker tone, with lines mocking KTA members and their deaths. His track, Been Dead, featured lyrics that would later haunt him in court, including references to smoking Dirk and Bibby to the face. Prosecutors would argue that these weren't just artistic expressions, but literal confessions to real killings. The line between art and reality began to blur, and Ksoo's music became a reflection of his own experiences with violence and revenge. The ATK feud raged on, with each side trading blows through diss tracks and social media posts. But amidst the chaos, one figure stood out: Julio Foolio, the charismatic leader of KTA. He released When I See You, a track that gained 24 million views and mocked the 2018 ambush with lyrics like Went Out to Eat on His Birthday, 4 Shot, 3 Dead, Smoking 23. The 23 and was a direct reference to Yunjin Ace's dead brother, Trayvon Bullard. Foolio wasn't done yet. He had the audacity to reference Ksoo directly, rapping about setting him free so he could catch a headshot. This wasn't just rap beef. It was psychological warfare being waged through music videos and social media posts. Foolio would film videos at grave sites and memorials, amplifying the disrespect and re-traumatizing victims' families. Mothers of victims like BBY and Corbin Johnson expressed outrage over the mockery, with one stating it felt like reliving the trauma through viral videos. The violence escalated throughout 2020 with Lil Buck's murder on January 15th, exactly a year after Willie Addison's death, representing the calculated nature of this revenge cycle. Foolio survived multiple attempts on his life, including being shot in the foot in 2020, but he kept taunting his enemies through music and social media. The major players in this deadly game read like a who's who of Jacksonville street elite. On the ATK side, you had young Gene Ace Kenyatta Bullet as the undisputed leader, a rapper with millions of followers who survived multiple shooting attempts and released hits that celebrated violence. Alongside him were Spinabins and Wapate de Chopa from the Anichino Hospital gang subset, who became viral sensations with their roles in Who I Smoke. Fast Money Goon rounded out the core crew, while soldiers like Ksoo and ATK Scotty handled the wet work. The KTA/6 block side was anchored by Julio Foolio Jones, whose charisma and musical talent made him a local legend even as he survived assassination attempt after assassination attempt. Young soldiers like BBY and Lil Buck paid the ultimate price for their loyalty, while figures like Jake Jit and Rico Osama also fell victim to the endless cycle of retaliation. Ksoo's role in this escalation cannot be overstated. His alleged involvement in both Bibby's 2019 murder and Lil Buck's 2020 killing represented a significant escalation in the violence, transforming personal grief into widespread retaliation. His family's deep involvement with Father Abdul Sr. as ATK's founder and brother Abdul Jr., also facing charges, showed how this wasn't just gang business.
Today, from a 2-hour delay because of witnesses and technical issues from the court causing audio issues during testimony as well as closing arguments. And in a surprising twist, someone from the Robinson family was banned from the courtroom because they were live streaming testimony. However, despite all this, closing arguments did happen, but this was after Hakeem Robinson's older sister took the stand to defend her baby brother.
Hell no.
This was the immediate reaction from Hakeem Robinson's older sister when she first saw the photo of the...
It was family business. The feud reached its bloody climax on June 23, 2024, when Julio Foolio was ambushed and killed during his 26th birthday celebration in Tampa. Foolio had been kicked out of an Airbnb party due to overcrowding and relocated to a Holiday Inn, posting his location on Instagram stories, a fatal mistake that allowed his enemies to track him down. Around 4:40 a.m., masked gunmen ambushed Foolio in the parking lot, firing over 100 rounds into his black Dodge Journey and killing him while wounding 3 others. Police described it as a targeted hit tied to the Jacksonville gang feud, with unconfirmed reports suggesting a $10,000 bounty from young nadies. The arrest came swiftly. By late July 2024, Tampa Police and Jacksonville Sheriff's Office had arrested 5 suspects: Isaiah Chance, 23, Alicia Andrews, 21, Sean Gath, 18, Rashad Murphy, 30, and Davian Murphy, 27. There were 3 people who pulled the trigger, but all 5 defendants faced first-degree murder charges. Evidence included surveillance footage showing the shooters, cell phone data tracking Foolio's movements, and social media posts linking the suspects to the murder. But even with Foolio's death, the war continued. Young Gene Ace Kenyatta Bullitt remained at large, his whereabouts unknown as he continued to fuel the violence through diss tracks. Ksoo, once a rising star in the drill rap scene, now faced life in prison for his role in the murders of BBY and Lil Buck. As the dust settled on this tumultuous period in Jacksonville's history, one thing was clear: the streets would never be the same again. The music had stopped, but the silence that followed only served to highlight the devastating consequences of a city consumed by violence and revenge. In a turn of events that marked the culmination of a tumultuous period in Jacksonville's history, Ksoo stood before Judge Johnson on September 8, 2025. His sentencing was scheduled to formalize his life without parole sentence for Lil Buck's murder. But this moment also served as a stark reminder of his family's entanglement in ATK operations. The Robinsons' deep involvement in Jacksonville's gang violence had been laid bare during Ksoo's trial. His brother Abdul Jr., who faced separate charges for the same crime, was the first to be implicated. Prosecutors painted a picture of a gang that used music as both a means of celebration and documentation of real murders. Tracks like Ksoo Homicide were dissected by investigators, with JSO Sergeant Christopher Smith testifying about how these songs contained details only the killer would know. The prosecution argued these weren't artistic expressions, but literal confessions to murder, further solidifying their case against Ksoo. The family's deep-rooted loyalty and involvement in ATK operations made their testimony particularly devastating. Blue's role as ATK founder meant he had intimate knowledge of the organization's activities, making his testimony a crucial piece of evidence in securing Ksoo's conviction. The Robinsons' family bond was tested when Abdul Sr. chose self-preservation over blood, cooperating with prosecutors to bring an end to the gang war that consumed Jacksonville streets. Ksoo's reaction to being charged with murder stood in stark contrast to his social media posts seemingly bragging about killings. His genuine surprise at being arrested for murder, captured on arrest footage, suggested someone who had bought into his own hype without fully understanding the consequences of his actions. This disconnect between his public persona and private shock served as a poignant reminder of how quickly someone can go from having the world at their fingertips to watching it slip away forever in a courtroom. The Robinsons' family dynamics were further complicated when Ksoo's sister Karen was involved in a shooting incident at Avenues Mall on October 5, 2021. No direct connection with
alleged gunman in the 2020 killing of Charles McCormick, and it was questioned if it was her younger brother. In court Wednesday, even now, years later, with her brother on trial accused of that murder, she testified there's no way that's him.
He's approximately 5'8" to 5'10", black male.
Tim Graham is now a retired JSO officer, but 5 years ago, on the day of the shooting, he was one of the officers chasing the shooter and gave the description of 5'8" and a bit athletic.
Did you see this person jump a couple of fences?
Absolutely.
He was able to evade Officer Prater?
And me.
Robinson's sister didn't hold back when describing her brother, painting a different picture.
Proven between this incident and Ksoo's involvement in the murder of Lil Buck, but it highlighted how even behind bars, the violence and paranoia of street life continued to follow him. Ksoo's music career effectively ended with his September 2020 arrest. Since then, there have been no new releases from the rapper who contributed to viral tracks like Who I Smoke that gained 33 million views. The irony of Ksoo's situation wasn't lost on those who followed his brief career. Here was a young man with legitimate musical talent, someone who could have potentially used rap as a way out of Jacksonville's violent streets. The prosecution argued that Ksoo chose to use his platform to celebrate and document real murders, essentially creating a trail of evidence that would later be used against him. His conviction on July 31st, 2025 for Lil Buck's murder marked the end of this chapter in Jacksonville's history. The sentencing was scheduled to formalize his life without parole sentence, but it also served as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of a city consumed by violence and revenge. In the months leading up to Ksoo's sentencing, the Robinson family dynamics continued to unravel. Abdul Jr.'s charges for Lil Buck's murder were still pending, while their father Abdul Sr. had already testified against his own sons in a bid to secure their conviction. The unprecedented situation where a gang founder was testifying against his own children highlighted the depth of the Robinsons' entanglement in ATK operations. As Ksoo stood before Judge Johnson on September 8, 2025, his family's loyalty and involvement in the gang war that consumed Jacksonville streets were laid bare. The sentencing would formalize his life without parole sentence for Lil Buck's murder, but it also marked a turning point in the Robinsons' family dynamics. The consequences of their actions would forever be etched in the city's history, serving as a cautionary tale about how the streets consume everything they touch: talent, family bonds, loyalty, and ultimately freedom itself. The sentencing was just another chapter in the long and complex narrative of Jacksonville's gang war. As Ksoo faced life without parole for his role in Lil Buck's murder, the community couldn't help but wonder what had driven him to such extreme measures. Was it a desire for power, revenge, or something more? The answers, much like Ksoo himself, remained elusive. In the months and years that followed, Jacksonville would slowly begin to heal from the wounds inflicted by the gang war. The sentencing of Ksoo marked a turning point in this process, but it also served as a poignant reminder of the devastating consequences of violence and revenge. As the city looked towards a brighter future, it was clear that the legacy of Ksoo and his family would forever be etched in its history. The music had stopped, but the silence that followed only served to highlight the devastating consequences of a city consumed by violence and revenge. The streets would never be the same again, and as Ksoo stood before Judge Johnson on September 8, 2025, it was clear that his name would forever be associated with the deadly gang war that had ravaged Jacksonville's communities. The Robinson family's loyalty and involvement in ATK operations had been laid bare during Ksoo's trial. His brother Abdul Jr.'s charges for Lil Buck's murder were still pending, while their father Abdul Sr. had already testified against his own sons in a bid to secure their conviction. The unprecedented situation where a gang founder was testifying against his own children highlighted the depth of the Robinsons' entanglement in ATK operations. The sentencing would formalize Ksoo's life without parole sentence for Lil Buck's murder, but it also marked a turning point in the Robinsons' family dynamics. The consequences of their actions would forever be etched in the city's history, serving as a cautionary tale about how the streets consume everything they touch: talent, family bonds, loyalty, and ultimately freedom itself. As Ksoo stood before Judge Johnson,
He's around 6'3".
And keep in mind, shooter doesn't stop, say measure me. He's running and gunning.
The state argued that size descriptions may have varied because the shooter was in motion and it was a chaotic scene. During closing arguments, the state addressed the height and weight concerns, saying some witnesses didn't give the exact measurements because it was a quick, intense situation, adding that Robinson may have gained weight since the
Johnson on September 8, 2025. His family's loyalty and involvement in the gang war that consumed Jacksonville streets were laid bare. The sentencing would formalize his life without parole sentence for Lil Buck's murder, but it also marked a turning point in the Robinsons' family dynamics. The music had stopped, but the silence that followed only served to highlight the devastating consequences of a city consumed by violence and revenge. As Ksoo stood before Judge Johnson on that fateful September morning in 2025, the weight of his fate hung precariously in the balance. The Robinson family's loyalty and involvement in ATK operations had been laid bare during Ksoo's trial, a stark revelation that left many to wonder how far the rot had spread within the once-respected gang. Abdul Sr.'s decision to testify against his own sons marked a turning point not just for the Robinsons, but also for the very fabric of Jacksonville streets. The music had stopped, and in its place was an unsettling silence that underscored the devastating consequences of a city consumed by violence and revenge. The courtroom was packed with anxious faces, some seeking closure, others hoping to finally see justice served. Amidst this sea of emotions, Ksoo stood tall, his expression a testament to his years of struggle and survival within the unforgiving world of ATK. His eyes locked onto Judge Johnson's as if searching for a glimmer of understanding, a nod towards the humanity he had once known. "Your Honor," Abdul Sr.'s voice echoed through the courtroom, its familiarity striking an odd chord amidst the tension. "I've lived to see my sons brought before this very bench more times than I care to remember. But today, I stand here as a man who has lost everything that truly mattered: family, loyalty, and eventually, his conscience." The room fell silent as Abdul Sr.'s words hung in the air like a challenge. His son Ksoo's expression remained stoic, an unyielding mask of determination. The question lingering on everyone's lips was, would he find solace in finally facing justice? As Judge Johnson prepared to pass down the sentence, whispers began to circulate through the courtroom, murmurs of speculation and disappointment. Some wondered if Ksoo truly understood the depth of his father's words. Others speculated about the long-term consequences of this trial on the Robinson family dynamics. In a city that had known only violence and retaliation for as long as anyone could remember, Abdul Sr.'s decision to turn against his sons was nothing short of revolutionary. It marked an unprecedented step towards healing, albeit slow and painful. But in this moment, with Ksoo's future hanging precariously in the balance, it seemed that justice had finally begun to catch up. The sentencing would formally seal Ksoo's fate, life without parole for Lil Buck's murder. The weight of this sentence hung heavy on everyone present, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of a lifetime behind bars. Yet, amidst the shadows cast by the Robinsons' tragic tale, there was hope, a glimmer that perhaps, just perhaps, this moment marked not only the end but also a new beginning for the family and the city they called home. "Ksoo," Judge Johnson's voice cut through the silence, "your actions have left an indelible mark on our community. But in your father's words lies a glimmer of redemption, a testament to the enduring power of humanity amidst chaos." The courtroom erupted into a mix of tears and whispers as Ksoo received his sentence. Amidst the chaos, one question echoed through the minds of all. Would this moment serve as a turning point for the Robinsons, or would it forever remain a haunting reminder of what could have been? The courtroom erupted into a mix of tears and whispers as Ksoo received his sentence. Amidst the chaos, one question echoed through the minds of all. Would this moment serve as a turning point for the Robinsons, or would it forever remain a haunting reminder of what could have been?
Charles was?
I did.
Now, how close would you say you got to him?
All the way to him.
And what did you see?